course, you do need to decide on a withdrawal strategy. I think a lot of us are familiar with the 4% rule. I've
Right.
also heard you tap your buckets in this order:
Yep.
taxable, then tax deferred, then tax free. What do
Yep.
we need to keep in mind?
Well, so the 4% rule, let's go back to that. That's
Yeah.
AKA, that's also known as the broker's rule. The broker's rule was basically back in the 80s, they tried to figure out, well, when somebody retires, how much can they take out of their money and make sure it lasts? And they came up with this number, 4%. They said, well, you could take out 4%. So if you have $100,000, you can withdraw out $4,000 per year. And through the ups and downs of the market, you should be okay. And by the time you're 90, there's a 95% chance that your money's still going to be there. And that was what they came up with, as they use this 4% rule. But there's been periods of time over history. Wall Street Journal came out in the 2008 and 2009 and said the 4% rule is bogus. It's now more like 2 to 3%. Well, why? Because we had just had a market crash. And so those rules sometimes need to be tweaked and changed depending on what's going on. Because if you retire, and let's say you go through a big catastrophic loss early in your retirement years, that might mean that 4% rule doesn't hold true.
Right.
And you might have to take out less. So, and I also tell people too, that you don't want all of your income coming from the stock market. That's what I call the play check. I get to live a good life so long as the market goes up. And if the market doesn't go up, well, I got to cut back. That's the play check. I get to live life good as long as everything is good. What I tell people is you need to create paycheck income. Dependable, consistent, reliable income. So maybe you have your Social Security and maybe you have some other income that's dependable, like a paycheck, like from work. Without working, you're taking some of your money and you're creating a stream of income that you can count on. And when you have that, that makes it a lot easier to live with than just that 4% rule that can live or die by what the market's doing. But you also mentioned something too that I think is important, which is the order of which you take your money out. And this is something I think is a big issue too, because I'm starting to see financial advisors across the country give really bad advice. They're finding people with Roth IRAs and they're saying, hey, why don't you cash that Roth IRA in, take that money and spend that first so that you don't have to pay taxes this year. Well, that might make sense this year because Roth money is tax-free. And so if you spend all of your tax-free money early, studies show that you'll run out of money earlier because taxes will likely go up in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is you want to protect that tax-free money. You want that money to grow as much as possible so that when you're 75 or 80 years old, you've spent through the taxable money, you've spent through the tax-deferred money, and here you are at 75 years old, maybe 80, 85 years old, and the rest of the money that you have is tax-free. So whenever you pull money out, it's not taxed. And that's a great way to live your later retirement years, is by not having to pay Uncle Sam a big bill. And by that means you're getting more income. And by that means just that's you're setting yourself up in a much better way.
Right. Well, and that money can grow tax-free indefinitely because it doesn't have required minimum distributions too.
And pass it on to your kids. And your beneficiary is completely tax-free. So there's a lot of reasons why not to raid your tax-free money first.
Yeah. I don't know who's giving other contrary advice.
Quite a lot, honestly.
Well, I'm glad we're having this conversation.